authors, it's Melody. Welcome to Author Nation, your go-to resource for everything you need to be a successful nonfiction author, from planning straight through to promotion. And in today's video, I am interviewing Susan Crossman, and we are going to talk about how a book builds bridges for an author. Welcome, Susan. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, thank you, Melody, and delighted to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here. Now, Susan is an author, an editor, a book coach, and my favorite, an adventuress who lives to harness the power of a good story to the goal of peace on earth. Having written 5 traditionally published books herself, Susan helps others inspired entrepreneurs polish their stories to make a difference in the world through her company, The Awakening Author. She provides a book coaching and editing service and runs online programs for budding authors. Above all else, in all she does, Susan encourages her clients to join her in the all-important task of seeing with our hearts as well as our eyes. Now, Susan, 5 traditionally published books. Are they fiction? Are they nonfiction? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I would love to, Melody. Yeah, my first book was a novel. And that one took me 13 years to write. I fell prey to the mindset traps that a lot of authors experience in that first book especially. I had no self-confidence. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I'm a professional writer. So me of all people, I should have had it, should have been a slam dunk for me to write a book, I thought at the time, arrogant as can be. But there were a lot of mindset issues for me in that one. And by the time I got that book published, it was 13 years. So that was my novel. And I'm traditionally published. So the next year, my publisher came to me and said, "Hey, have you written any short stories?" And as it happened, I had written some short stories. And so the next year it was a collection of short stories that came out. And then my publisher came to me the next year and said, "Well, you've been writing a long time. What about writing a book about how to write?" And I was all over that because I was doing a lot of content marketing and creation and management at the time. And so writing is such an issue for so many business people that I was happy to do that. So that was the third book. And then a year or so later, the publisher came to me again and said, "Well, you're doing this thing called content marketing, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, how about a book about content marketing?" And so that was book number 4. And then book number 5, I co-authored with a client who's a referral marketing expert. And we created a playbook for business people on how to connect your referral marketing with your online marketing, your content marketing. And that was it. So fiction and nonfiction, and learn something in every single book about book writing and how to do it and how not to do it.
Yeah. Excellent. I bet that third book didn't take you 13 years.
No. I've come to realize that there is a skill set involved in writing a book. And the skill set is around how you manage yourself and how you manage your time and how you manage your connection to your book. And so certainly by the time I had that third book underway, I knew what I was doing. I knew this was going to happen. I knew how to get it published. It was easy. And so, I'm highly motivated. I had a system and a process and a lot of accountability because I had signed my contract with my publisher and I had to deliver.
There's a good source of motivation.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about the book as a bridge builder. And I think this is a great segue into that. So could you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Melody. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Is I've come upon this idea that when we are writing a book, we're actually building 3 bridges, and they're just beautiful bridges, and they help you cross into a new world in each of these bridges. And so the first bridge is a bridge deeper into who you are as an author. And I view writing a book as a transformational journey, in that, especially with that first book, we're not an author yet as we're writing it, but writing that book requires us to plumb deep within ourselves, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Actually, we have to really investigate who we are and explore that in the creation of the book. So the book becomes a vehicle for building that bridge to a better understanding of who we are. So that's bridge number 1. And bridge number 2, of course, is bridging to our readers. because if your book doesn't create that bridge to your readers, you're not serving them. You're not giving them a good story or good information that they're going to use to make their lives better in some way. And so that bridge needs to be very secure and stable in order for you to connect with your readers so they feel satisfied, so they give you a good review perhaps, or refer the book to a friend. So that's bridge number 2. And then bridge number 3 is neat too, because in writing our books, we're also bridging to a future sense of who we are, our future version of ourselves. And that is really that bridge where we cross from who we are today to who we are as an author. So we're layering in a new identity in a lot of ways in becoming an author, in writing that book. And that, I think, is what almost stops a lot of people from completing their book, because they don't have a real sense of who they are as an author. They don't identify as an author yet. And I know that was another thing that kept me from finishing my book for a long time, was this question of, who do I think I am to write a book? I'm not an author. I'm not famous. Like, who's going to read this? And, all that mind trash.
Yes. It's that vicious circle, right? I can't write a book because I'm not an author, and I'll never be an author if I don't write a book.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to write that first book to become an author. So you have to not be an author while writing that first book, or you have to act as if while you're writing the book. Let's dig into each of these. So, writing a book to connect with yourself. I find that a lot of authors, when writing a book, all of a sudden they have to figure out how to really clearly say something. And they also have to start questioning their own ideas. Like, is this really what I'm meaning, what I'm saying? And so can you talk a little bit about, that bridge to self?
Well, sure. Yeah. I work with a lot of highly conceptual people. They have great ideas. They're creatives, often very intuitive people as well. And they live in this world of ideas and concepts and inspiration and aspiration. And all of those big picture ideas don't lend themselves to the granular detail of describing what that is, of explaining what that is. And so in creating that bridge to themselves, certainly a lot of my clients find that they have to build the bridge, make those stepping stones of the tiny ideas that explain the big ideas. And that's very difficult for a lot of people. And so, but it's a process that we can all learn. And it's something that, it's like a muscle that maybe you haven't used a whole lot. But in the process of working with my clients, certainly as a book coach and as an editor, we really chunk down into that world of the stepping stones that create the idea. Yeah. I look at an author as an observer, and an interpreter of human experience, whether it's a nonfiction book or a fiction book. And it's really our job to observe and explain. And so we might have the observation part down pat. It's the explanation part that requires us to work on ourselves in order to be able to bridge to our readers.
Yeah. I mean, the old expression, right? If you really want to know something well, teach it.
It's so true.
Right. Yeah. And so in the same sense, right? If you really want to know subject matter really well, write about it.
Yes.
It forces you to really think through things and look at yourself. And yeah, that's really great.
Well, you've probably felt that too, Melody. You work as an editor. Mm-hmm. And if you've had manuscripts like I have, and I'm sure we all have had them, the author becomes so familiar with their topic that they make some assumptions about what they've actually put down on the paper and what their reader knows, whether it's terminology that the reader might not know, or a concept that the reader hasn't had explained to them ever, or, little things like that. And as an editor, the job is to, again, help chunk that down into small bites that the reader is going to understand.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And in memoir as well, you're reading a memoir and you're editing a memoir for someone, and Sally pops up and you're like, who's Sally? Of course, the author knows who Sally is, right? My best friend since kindergarten. What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, we didn't know that.
You don't know Sally?
Exactly right. So that kind of thing in books as well, right? So
yes.
Assumptions. So that's great.
So that's why you hire an editor. That they're on your team. An editor is on your team.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about readers, that bridge to your readers. I love this idea. I love this idea of, readers I always think of readers as standing on one side of this vast canyon, and they want to get on the other side, and they don't know how. And the author can build a bridge, right?
Yes.
So could you talk a little bit about that bridge to your readers?
Yeah, well, I love that. It's what a lot of people worry about, actually. I did a lot of market research prior to developing my first course, which is about how to start writing a book. It's called the Kickstart Book Writing Formula. Mm-hmm. And what really surprised me, being the author of books myself, I'm a career writer, I swim in the pond of writing. And what really surprised me in my market research was how many people didn't have a clue how to start writing a book. And part of that fear was around, well, I don't know how to reach my readers. Like, I don't know how to say things that they're going to care about and be interested in. And really, that is the job of the book. In creating that book, that's your task. And it's a monumental task in a lot of ways. It's because we've become so familiar with our own message and our own wisdom and our own process that maybe we've spent years developing, that it's intimidating for a lot of people to try and explain that. And I would go back to this idea that you're not writing that book alone, that you form a team with your book coach, if you hire a book coach, and certainly your editor when it comes to that, in creating that bridge. It's a really important bridge because your reader doesn't know the things that you know. And you've got to download that from your brain to their brain through the vehicle of the book, the bridge. And so, yeah, it's a really exciting thing, and it's a bit daunting, but when it's done well, and we've all seen it done really well, we all have our favorite books where, yes, that book just got me, I just resonate with that so much. So we know that it's possible to do it, and that's the aspiration as an author, is to do that well. The other thing I would say about that too, that I feel is really important for people to know, is that not everybody's going to like your book.
Yes.
We have a perfect reader out there somewhere, but it's not everybody. And it's really important to be very clear on who you're writing that book for. Don't write the book for everybody, because you can't. There's no such thing as an everybody. But there is a 45-year-old intuitive from North America who has a college education and a family, and add on a lot of different criteria that of characteristics that describe your ideal reader. You can write for that lady. And that's what I really recommend people do, is really be clear on who that reader is, that when you want them to just go, I've been waiting all my life for this book. Oh, thank goodness, But the same book written for that individual is definitely not going to appeal to a 72-year-old investment banker from Brooklyn.
Right.
They're not going to like your book, and that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that brings me to this question, because I know that you are a traditionally published author. You also have worked in content marketing for many years. So let's putting that all together. What if my readers what if it's like a business to business type thing, where I'm writing it because I want my book to speak to my ideal client, and somehow I want to bridge that divide between me, the business, and them, the people who I want to serve. What advice would you give about those bridges?
Well, be really clear on who your audience is again. Be really clear on why you're writing that book. What's the gift that you want the book to give them? What action do you want them to take? I think in terms of a business-related book, I think it's pretty important that you lead people back to your website. At this point, we're still using websites rather than apps, but have a conversion strategy in place for your book to convert people into your community, so that they have a chance to get to know more about you and play in your field a little bit more from a business perspective. That often looks like having content on your website that you can refer people to from the book. So people will give you their email address in order to access the content. And then you can communicate them legally through email and so on. I think that's really helpful. I've seen this done really well in a number of books, where there's maybe a resources page, a gated resources page that relates to the book. And on that page are PDFs, there are guides, there are templates, there's a whole garden of wonderful resources that the reader can enjoy and learn from and grow from, but they can't get there except through the book. Yeah. So, I think that's a really important bridge too. And there are so many costs, as you know, Melody, involved in writing a book. It can be a very costly endeavor. It's an investment. And as a business person, you want to make sure that investment relates to, first of all, your authority and your credibility. So write the best book that you possibly can. Make sure there is an editor involved, a qualified editor who knows how to write well and who has, if it's a business book, who has a business understanding. Mm-hmm. A romance novelist, an editor who's got a lot of experience as a romance novelist is probably not the person you want editing your business book. Yes. So make sure that their skills are compatible and their understanding of the world is compatible with your subject material. And even like if it's a really technical book, get a technical editor involved, because that's really important. And I think people don't understand a lot about the different kinds of editing that's available. So educate yourself, get to know that. So that bridge to your clients is important in terms of the book. Your book will bolster your authority if it's extremely well written. I look at structure in that area as well. Make sure it's well structured. And do market research. Ask people, what do they want to learn? What are they afraid of? What are they challenged about? So that you know what you need to deliver to be their answer, to be their solution.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really, really great advice. So we've talked about the bridge from to the author herself, and we've talked about the bridge to the reader. Now, the third bridge you mentioned, and I'm fascinated by this idea, is the bridge to the future self. Can you dive into that for us?
Oh, yeah. This is so fun. When I was working on my first book, I couldn't visualize my life as an author. When, of course, people can't. How would you know what that's going to be like? Mm-hmm. And we have an illusion about what that's going to look like. I was afraid of success at that time. I thought, if this book really takes off and I get rich and famous, and what's that going to do to my family? I was the mother and stepmother of 5 kids. If I get really famous, then how do I be the mother I want to be to my children? How do I run my business? I got all messed up in my head. So I couldn't visualize the future. So it would have been really nice for me to have guidance around that, to first of all say, chances of you being a runaway success, making $1 million on that first book, that doesn't happen very often. Yeah. So don't worry about that right now. If it happens, cross that bridge when you come to it. But also some guidance around the practicalities of being an author. And that in writing that book, and certainly in writing that first book, I could not imagine how my world was going to open up after. It's unimaginable. And so in writing the book, we are creating a bridge to an unknown territory, an unfamiliar world. And it's a good world. It's, in my experience, it has been a really magnificent blossoming of me as a human being and also me as a writer. And opportunities have opened up that if I had set out to say, this is what I want to happen, I couldn't have come up with this. And so it's you have to be kind of comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable when you're writing that book, and open to opportunity that shows up. I've given a talk, TED type talk, on a stage in a rugby stadium in New Zealand. Yeah. And all that relates to having become an author. Well, I live in Toronto, Canada. So New Zealand is a very long way from my home base, and a rugby stadium to give a talk is like the most terrifying moment of my whole life. But now I can say I did that, right?
And I think that if you're embarking on this journey of writing a book and you get a good book coach or a good developmental editor, they can help you with that, that unknown. Not that they can make it known, but they can give you, they can talk to you about, what is it that you want out of this book for you, for your life, for your career, for your business, for, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid it might, how might it change your life that you're afraid of? And and then people can say, well, I'm afraid of the success. I'm afraid of the failure. And then a book coach can kind of help put that into perspective, not give answers, but put it into perspective so it's more manageable. I think that's one thing a good book coach can do for you.
Yeah, I totally agree, Melody. That's really brilliant, for sure. Yeah, it's not that it's all roses. It's not that you become overnight rich at all. But everything all happens the way it's meant to happen, and it would have been very nice for me to have that kind of guidance for that first book, and any of my books. Like in a way, I've had to become the person I wish I'd had beside me when I was at the beginning of my journey, because I had nobody. I had no advice. I had nobody to help me or who had the perspective that would have really made the journey easier and more enjoyable for me along the way. So I think that's why I do what I do now is really to be that person for other people that just say, hey, it's okay. Here's what the long term might look like for you. Can I help you be open to that? And can I help you have fun with this?
Yes, absolutely. It reminds me of something Anne Lamott said in her book, Bird by Bird. And this is not a direct quote, but she said something like, when I gave my first book to my agent and it was published, I thought, trumpets would blow and reviewers would acclaim, nonsense, la, 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 la. She said, I thought that about my second book and my third book and my fourth book, and it didn't happen, so that whole, these ideas we have in our head versus what really happens. So let's talk a little bit more about you. Earlier, you talked about, if you're writing a romance, work with someone who knows about romances. And if you're writing a business book, work with someone who knows about business books. So tell me about your services that you have for authors and who your favorite type of author is. Like, who do you love to work with?
Oh, I love them all. First of all, I love what I do. So I work as a book coach and an editor, as we've mentioned, and book coaching is about helping people get that book put together. It's about coming to the end of the in my model of the world, coming to the end of that first draft so that the book says what you would like it to say. You've got your audience in mind, your reader in mind. It's well done. It's well written. It needs editing still. That first or second draft is still a long way from publication ready, usually. And so that's where I kind of step in to help them get to that point. And then as an editor, I help, I don't want to say perfect the manuscript, but really polish the manuscript. There's no such thing as perfection.
Yeah, no.
I do that through, as I mentioned, I have a 6-week course for people to start writing the book, because my research showed me that's really hard for a lot of people. And then I have a mastermind group program where we take it even before, if people haven't even started, we can bring you on board in that program and take you through to the finish line and to get the book finished. It's a year-long program. Along the way, we do a lot of work around mindset. I have a writing clinic involved in that group where we look at style and we look at sentence structure. A lot of people are insecure around their ability to write, and you don't need to be. It's a skill that you improve over time. I mean, I've been writing professionally for decades, and I've been edited my whole career. Yeah. And I love being edited because it makes me a better writer. So part of that higher end program is about improving your muscles around writing. And we also develop a publication plan. So we look at all the different kinds of publication. I'm traditionally published. That's not the answer for everybody. Mm-hmm. It's, and certainly for a lot of business people or entrepreneurs, it's a long haul, and it doesn't meet all the needs of everybody who wants to write a book. So we look at all of those different choices, set up a plan, and then we also have a book marketing component where we look at, okay, once you've got this book done, what are you going to do with it? Because the marketing is really the lifeblood of the future of the book. If you're not marketing it, it's not like people are going to beat a path to your door and demand to buy your book, So anyway, so that's the two main ways that I work with people. I do work one-on-one with some people as well. which is fun. And my ideal client is really somebody who is an entrepreneur, often a coach or a speaker. I work with a lot of coaches and speakers, and they've generally had a really hard time in life somewhere along the line. They've hit that brick wall of often disaster or perceptive disaster. Something really challenging has happened in their life, and they've done their work. And so whether it's a lot of therapy, whether it's a lot of coaching, whether it's just life experience, they have been able to put those difficult situations into a positive place for themselves. Mm-hmm. And now they're on a mission to take that wisdom and put it in service of other people. While building their business, quite often that's a component of the business that they offer, but it's really about how can we make the world a better place for people? My mission is peace on earth, and I believe a well-written book is an important part of that. I look at the number of books I've read that have changed my life, and sometimes it's just one sentence in one book that I go, oh, yeah, the light bulb goes on, and you think, oh, yeah, I get it. Life is better. And so that's what I want to do, is support the people that have those nuggets of wisdom that they can make available to other people so that we can have a more harmonious world. Yeah. That's my dream.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, beautiful. I love that idea, that one line. Have you ever underlined, highlighted, copied out, this one line,
stars in the margin.
Exactly, yeah.
So turn down the page.
Yeah. So Susan has a mini course, right, like a pro, that helps you with the structure of a piece, your style, and how to write for better audience engagement. And as you just said, Susan, writing isn't some inborn talent that you have or you don't, right? You're not born with it. You can develop this skill. And this is a course that would be really helpful for viewers who are feeling like, am I really a writer? Can I write? Yes, you can. And so I'm going to drop the link in the description for people who are interested in trying out that course, which is a great way to kind of interact more with you as well. And besides that, how can people get a hold of you, Susan?
Well, sure. I would love people to get in touch with me. Just email me at Susan, SUSAN, at Crossman Communications with an S.com. And that'll come into my inbox, and we can set up some time to chat if you have a project that you feel you want to chat about a little bit more. It's really neat, Melody, because one of the things I love about what I do is that quite often when I have those conversations with people, they have never talked about their book with anybody to that degree before. And it's such a liberation for people to have that safe space where they know they can talk about it, and nobody's going to think they're weird or odd or, for writing a book. It's something most of the world doesn't do. And so it's really fun for me to provide that safe space for people so they can know they can open up about it.
Yeah. And when I have those conversations with authors, they often have, the experience of everyone in life is going, yeah, you can write a book. Go ahead, write a book. But there's no meat to it. Or there are the people who are afraid for it. Oh, there's a lot of money, so, and so that being in that space where somebody is not saying yes, yes, or no, no, but here I'm listening to you, and giving you what some viable options are. So yeah, Susan. So again, I'll put the Susan's email in the description. There'll be a link to the course. I'll drop in her website and her social media as well. So however you want to get a hold of Susan, you can do that. And Susan, thank you so much for joining me today. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Melody. This has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it too.
Yes, and if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. We would love to hear your comments. So if you have questions for Susan, drop them in the comments. I'll let her know they're there and she can come and answer them. I'd love to hear from you either way. And if you'd like more of the same, please subscribe. And then I will stop recording.